Yes, I knew that if we had Douglas with us, the escaping slaves would swarm like bees to honey. The plan would work. So I sent word to him, and he agreed to meet with me near Chambersburg. I tried to persuade him, but he said he would not go with me. He said that it was a perfect steel trap, and that once we were in, we would never get out alive. We talked a long time, but no, there was no convincing him. No, the entire thing was my own doing, and that of my men, including my sons. Harper's Ferry. Well, that morning of the 16th of October, I arose earlier than usual, called the men together for worship. We prayed together, and I read at length from Holy Scriptures. And Moses said to the people, "Remember this day in which ye came out from Egypt, out of the house of bondage. For by strength of the hand, the Lord hath brought you out from this place." The entire day was a solemn one. And that evening I said, "Men, I enjoin you to shed no blood unnecessarily. You must remember how dear life is. Now get on your arms, we will proceed to the ferry." We loaded the wagon, started down the road, and my men cut the telegraph wires. We crossed the bridge into Harper's Ferry. And at the government gunworks, we took the watchman by surprise. I told him, "We are here in the name of Jehovah, and we intend to free all the Negroes in this state." We set up our headquarters, the Armory Fire Engine House, and then I sent out a detachment to round up some hostages around the town in case we needed them to make an escape. Now, my men returned with one hostage I was particularly interested in having, Colonel Lewis Washington, George Washington's great-grandnephew. Yes. They brought in 2 other men, and they liberated 11 slaves. No, 12 slaves, that's right. Now, we armed the Negroes with pikes and told them to guard the hostages. Now, it was sometime around midnight that we first heard shots. And the shots sounded as if they were coming from near the station, and it turns out it was my men shooting at a train against my explicit orders. I had told the men not to fire, not even to return fire if there was any danger to innocent persons. So I immediately dispatched a messenger to the bridge to let the train pass once. But by then, of course, the damage had been done by the report of the gunfire. Then we started hearing alarm bells ringing through the town. And, well, in the morning, the hostages had to eat. So I sent out for breakfast over at the Wager House Hotel. They sent back hot coffee and biscuits for everyone. No, I didn't eat it. No, but I can tell you this, that as the morning light was filling the valley, the men of the town shooting at us, started to shoot at us from all around, taking target practice, these pot shots. Obviously, some of them had been drinking all night, but they're whooping, they're hollering. And then my son Oliver and young Will Thompson, they come running up to the engine house from the train bridge where we had stationed. They were on sentinel at the train bridge. They come running up to the engine house and telling us that the vigilantes, the local militia, have driven them off the train bridge. So I called all the men over from the arsenal. We formed a hasty firing line in front of the engine house. We drove them all back onto the bridge. But then, as we were retreating to our positions, someone in one of the buildings across the street fired a shot that shot down Dangerfield Newby, one of our men. Dangerfield Newby. There was a brave man, a fine man. He came with us to free his wife and baby from slavery in nearby Virginia. shot down in the street. So then we decided, well, with all of these people shooting at us, taking target practice on us, we tried to negotiate a ceasefire. So I sent out my son Watson and Aaron Stevens under white flags of truce. And both of them were shot down in the street, holding white flags. Watson managed to crawl back to us, but they took Stevens. And a little later that afternoon, my other son, Oliver, decided to survey the situation, so he opened the engine house door just a crack to look out. As soon as the door was open, he was struck by a bullet through the crack in the door. A mortal wound. Fell back into my arms. So I have my two sons are bleeding on the ground. I call for a doctor. Well, the townspeople send someone in under a white flag of truce, which we honor. It turns out he's no doctor. He's just someone sent in to tell me that the situation is hopeless and I must surrender. I sent him away. Then later the federal troops arrived. They took up positions, but they didn't do anything. And then we spent that long, dark, cold night there in the engine house. Next morning, the Marine lieutenant came to the door of the engine house with a letter from his commanding officer stating their terms, our immediate unconditional surrender. I told him surrender is out of the question. We must be given means to withdraw. And please, send a doctor to see to my sons. Well, moments later, on his signal, they stormed the engine house. Sometime during the fight, I hear someone shout out, "That's Osawatomie Brown!" I turn around just in time to see a soldier lunging at me with his sword. Now, yes, his sword catches on my buckle, bends double, and breaks off. Strong buckle, weak sword. Now there's the hand of God for you. But then he begins to beat me with the hilt of the broken sword about the head, and neck. And the next thing he stabs me a few times. The next thing I remember, I'm waking up outside, laying on the grass, asking, where is my son? With my captors all standing around and asking questions, going on and on and on. They're trying to get me to identify my allies, my supporters. But I cannot implicate others. It was by my own folly that I was defeated. I could easily have saved myself if I had just exercised my better judgment rather than yielding to my feelings. You see, I wanted to allay the fears of my prisoners and their families, and those who believed that we had just come here to burn and kill. I regret the loss of life. It was my men. My men were the ones who were slaughtered like animals in the street. I have lost my two noble sons. There can be no greater love. No greater love than to lay down one's life for others. We came to free the slaves, and only that. In my opinion, it is the greatest service that a man could render to his God.